morning, everybody, and welcome to Estonia. I'm very proud that this conference takes place here in Tallinn this year. It's interesting that while preparing for this presentation today, I was asked to tell you why is Estonia so highly ranked in PISA. And of course, finally, nobody would know, but I think we need to look a little bit into the history of Estonian education to have an answer to that question. Because, you know, Estonians, only a couple of decades after they became free from serfdom, they organized already fundraising to start a school for Estonian children, which will take them further from the primary education level to the secondary level as we know it today. Imagine, these people had spent centuries in serfdom. They gained freedom. They became owners of their land. But they were not satisfied only with the fact that they now can take care of their land, their farms, and have their children working for their own families, for their own farm, for their own land. They realized that they want to give their children something more, a better education. Also, it's very important to notice that in Estonian schools, even at that time and at that level, when we were taught by our German pastors and other people who were not even Estonians, and the school was not in Estonian language, girls went to school as well. This was not questioned in this country. Everybody realized that, first of all, we need educated people. Second, we also need to educate our girls, because smart nation is built by smart mothers. For some reason, Estonia has always known that. But of course, originally also in Estonia, there was quite a lot of discussion how high should girls aspire. In the beginning of the 20th century, before the Estonian Republic was declared in 1918, also some professors in Tartu University, which was founded by Swedish state already in 17th century by the King Gustav II Adolf. Then in the beginning of 20th century, some professors had to face, outcries that they allowed female students to sit in their law classes. But Estonian women, having never felt at home at primary level and later at secondary level that they do not deserve highest education, they fought back. First Estonian female student sorority was established in 1920, 2 years after Estonia declared a state. There were already enough students to start the female student sorority. In 20 years, this number rose to 5 in Tartu University. 5 female student sororities by 1940. Of course, the beginning was not easy. For example, my grandmother always told me, she was part of that first female student sorority, that when the sisters first founded the corporation called Filia Patria, Daughters of the Homeland, they had to carry a long whip with them because the students from male sororities tended to question rather aggressively their right to participate in academic life in Estonia. But they never gave up. And I have to say that the Estonian state, the Estonian Republic, has always promoted equal education for girls and for boys. This little lesson into history, I think, tells you why Estonia ranks so high in PISA tests. The reason is there. We have always known that everybody has a right to education, everybody needs the education, and that even if you seem to have a positive change in the society, like you have your own farm and you can take care of your own land, this is never enough. I told you already about my grandmother. She went to university. She came from a peasant family and she was 12th child, 8th daughter, yet she went to university. This is something which we have realized, that education for younger children in the family, particularly, who will never have a big heritage, this is something which will take our nation forward. Where we are now, in the beginning of 21st century, I think we are exactly where everybody else. Similarly, like every other school system in developed countries, Estonian school has prepared for our children the best curriculum what we could dream up when we were preparing the school years of our children. And of course, like everybody else, we have missed important elements of change because we simply could not have noticed them. Of course, like everybody else, we have noticed that the technological cycle is getting shorter and shorter. Like if we compare to 20th century when we designed our school as it nowadays is and as we know it, basically two things, the horse cart and petroleum lamp, they went totally out of fashion. All other technologies developed, got more efficient and effective, but they survived. Technological cycle was long enough to prepare school for our children and even grandchildren. Without major changes, we could continue teaching as we had done it last century. In 20th century, we thought it will continue into the future. But if we look nowadays, technological cycle is extremely short. The mobile phones in our pockets, they will be Stone Age in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. Lots of technology, lots of things which we thought will be here for long are totally extinct. And we need to think how to prepare our children for this radically shifting society. One thing is shortening of the technological cycle, but the other thing is globalism. This is another element which we need to think about. Our kids are not going to live in our society as we know it here in Estonia. They will live and work everywhere, globally. They need to be prepared for that. We haven't thought about these things really when we sent our kids to school. But if I ask my 9-year-old, he's in 4th grade in Estonia, I ask him, Kaspar, how is it in your English class, for example? There is a textbook for 4th grade in Estonian school, of course, like in every school. And this basically deals with, beginner's lessons. Like, I don't like brown dog, I prefer black dog. This kind of difficulty. And I asked Kaspar, how many kids in your class really study from this book, find this interesting and stimulating? He thought and said, maybe one. I said, okay, you speak English fluently because you lived in other country as well, but how are others? He says, everybody speaks fluently. I ask, how come? Well, we all look, of course, YouTube. We all have our favorite YouTubers, and most of them, speak English. Simple as that. Can anybody write in English? No, we cannot write. And we find learning to write very boring because texts we have to write, they deal with, my dog is brown, what color is your dog? So the whole class full of kids of 9 years old in a perfectly good school, because all schools in Estonia are very good, facing the curriculum of our well thought of school program, are all bored in that class. I asked, what do you need to know about English? He said, well, of course I need to learn to write, but it would be much more interesting if the texts were not so boring. And then, some of my classmates, they really don't know that what is not a nice thing to say. See, we need to teach them what is rude in English language, not English language. And we need to stimulate their knowledge, what they already have, to inspire them to achieve higher levels. English is probably the, clearest example. But we cannot say that English is the only example. Not at all. Children find interesting math problems to solve. In Estonian language, there exist also internet sites where you can solve math problems and take tests and queries and learn this way. Many children do. Where does it leave us? It leaves us with a cohort of children going to school whose knowledge base is not anymore the function of their age. It's very different, and it's very different between different kids, because some are simply interested in English and some are interested in math, and I found also that astronomy is something which kids really are interested in and learn in internet. I think they know more than I know by the age of 10 about stars and astronomy. So what do we do with these kids in the school? If we continue as if nothing had happened and nothing has changed, I think we run into deep trouble. Because already here in Estonia, and I believe also elsewhere, there is a problem that particularly boys don't want to study. They find it boring at the school. Girls somehow tend to tolerate more the classes which are not so stimulating, but this is not the reason to give them classes which are not so stimulating. I think we need to quickly forget that if you are 7, you go to first grade, if you are 8, you go to second grade, etc. We need to get to the feedback-based school programming. It will be much more individual, much more directly related to children's interests and their knowledge level. How can this be done? Well, I'm making this plea again to all Estonians among you. But maybe other countries could be quicker than we are, and then I will be terribly envious. Please, we need a school program, primary level and secondary level, like a computer game. We need it in the computer. We need it in the format where children can test their knowledge and find stimulating programs to take them further. Yes, they would roughly need to know still the same what they will learn painfully and boringly by the 12th grade, everybody. But they should be able to do this not in sitting in the class and being taught, but rather sitting in the class and going through a supervised learning process, each to their own level. I think this is the only way we can provide our kids with a stimulating school without ourselves going totally crazy trying to keep them calm at the school, parents and teachers alike. Because right now, what I can tell to my son is exactly this. Yes, I know it is boring, and I understand your pain, but I cannot do anything about it. And again, I'm absolutely not accusing our teachers. Quite to the contrary, I'm calling upon our decision makers, among them also our teachers, directors of the schools, people working in the Ministry of Education. Let's give our teachers the tool to allow children a feedback-based learning system where they could develop independently, happily, sitting still with their classmates, but learning totally different things. The same would apply to, of course, language teaching. They will be globally traveling citizens. They would need many language skills. But one school, of course, can only provide for 3, maybe 4, if it is a specialized school, language training programs. Again, we have wonderful tools nowadays which could provide kids with internet-based learning for far bigger number of languages in any school, in Estonia and elsewhere, because I think language learning programs based on language immersion, contact with the language, have proven their own right. Estonian kids and I think French kids and Finnish kids, they can all use the same programs to study. But the teachers need these tools urgently, because otherwise our kids will lose interest in the school. We have tried, and some still believe that we need to limit the children's access to new technologies. But I think this is materially wrong to do so, because these technologies will be among us and around them in a far more advanced formats than they are now. What they need to learn, quite to the contrary, is how to manage artificial intelligence among them, around us, in the middle of us. I can give you an example how our generation of pretty smart people do not understand what does it mean to have a robot among us. and what are their expectations which are wrong about robots. We had during the EU Council presidency, we had a package delivery robot delivering chocolates to people in the council room. And of course, people saw it, and this robot is rather cute. And they wanted to take pictures with it. How did they do it? Do you think they did what is right to do? Step in front of the robot stops, you grab your selfie. No, they tried to talk to him. Come here, please, like a dog. You see, our animistic instinct overrides our brain. They were all very smart people, I can tell you. But our children will have more and more of these kind of algorithms and physical manifestations of narrow IE. A robot is smart in doing something, but more or less is like a deeply autistic person in all other elements. Our children need to manage this world. And indeed, we cannot give them exact technical skills for that. But the least we could do is stop blaming technology and technological development on making kids not being interested in going to school in our old-fashioned way. We need to embrace this technology. We need to show them that this helps them to get better education, stimulating education, and prepare them for the fact that among them there will be machines which will be very smart in some things and extremely not adapted to social life in other things, so that they would not have this animistic instinct to talk to a robot which is not meant to be talked to. If we keep telling them that iPad is a very bad thing, this wouldn't happen. Quite to the contrary. We need to bring more and more little robots to the school. In Estonia, there are, I've seen in the first grade, children have little insect-like robots which they can program to follow red dots or green dots or yellow dots. This is the way to go. Every child has the right to access this kind of world. And you know what? We would still be probably teaching them things which are old-fashioned when they grow up. But we also have always got something right and keep getting something right, and we'll need to keep this right. There is one thing which wouldn't change. Actually, it gets even more important. When the technology takes over the boring jobs, then there is one thing where we always excel, we people. And this will be our job in the future. I believe that quite soon 80% of the workforce, at least, is working in the business of being a compassionate human being. Everything else machines can do, but we excel in being compassionate human beings. So teaching our children, whatever technological level we would apply at the school, today or tomorrow, and whatever technological level they would have to face when they grow up, being a compassionate human being, being an honest member of society, being an assertive person, able to stand up for yourself, for your friends, making at the same time sure that you are not infringing the rights of other people. This is something which we have always gotten right in our schools, and this is something which we need to keep getting right. Yes, we will use all the interesting technologies, and we will miss some new technologies coming up while designing our new school based on feedback and independent learning. But this is something which we cannot get wrong. I think my grandchildren, they are now 3 and 1. They will face, when they grow up, one of the two situations. One is a happy humankind using wonderful technologies which are also environmentally green. And then they need all those skills we have been talking about. And again, above all, the ability to be a compassionate human being, respecting everybody's rights and standing up for their own. But the other situation might be much worse. And this is that they will be dealing with horrible climate change problems, still with the help of a lot of technology. But in the situation where the world around them, is not as friendly as we hope. And then I think this ability to step into other shoes, take into account the other people's viewpoint, remain a compassionate human being in a dangerous, hot world will be even more important. So my time is running out. With these thoughts, I trust the future of my children and grandchildren into your hands globally, because I know all children will work and live globally in the future. And I wish you all the success here in Tallinn. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you. The lead character in Forrest Gump said, and I quote, "Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get." I have a box of yummy chocolate. But it's not the most important thing about this box, I think. Slightly more important is that with each piece of yummy chocolate, you get a question about Estonia. And an answer on the reverse side. But I think the most important thing about this tiny box of chocolate and questions about Estonia is that it has been produced by a student company of Tartu Jaan Poska High School. And it tells us about the activity, resourcefulness, and entrepreneurship of the younger generation. So, Madam President, thank you once again for your speech and opening the conference. Thank you.
Thank you.